The meeting is called to order. Welcome to the Wednesday, February 28th Board of Education meeting. We were in executive session from 6 to 7 discussing teacher tenure recommendation type subjects. At this time, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Introductions.
Dave Hurst.
Holly Dellenbaugh. Meredith Moriarty.
Charmaine Widgesinger.
Jody Monroe.
Christine Beck.
Lynn Lenhart.
Jonathan Fishbein.
Michael Cooper.
And Judy Kehoe.
Can I have a motion to approve the February 8th, 2018 board minutes?
So moved.
Any any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Is there anybody available from the Student Senate? Hi. Come on, Josh, state your name.
Hi, I'm Josh Hauser. I'm from Student Senate. We just had a meeting today, and at it we went over a few things. First off, we started planning for Mr. Bethlehem, which didn't run last year, but Mr. Nomel approved it, so we're going to carry that on again this year. And then we also started planning for our courtyards that we want to open up in the spring. We're going to try to get access to one of them. We're not sure, possibly one of the ones right out here by the library. And we put a committee together to look into buying picnic tables and figuring out who's going to monitor the courtyards. Also, we looked into buying more water bottle fillers for the school to put in place of some of the water fountains because the ones that are being used are really popular, so we want to try to purchase some more. Also, we just got a really generous donation from the Bethlehem Community Fund last week for the backpack program, and that's going to help us out a lot. Also, we put together another committee to try to figure out placement for some speed bumps in the parking lot because through the Google form that we set up for all the students in the school, we found that a lot of them were really concerned about the speed of some of the cars that drive through the parking lot. And in the winter, the speed bumps are removed from the parking lot to make it easier to plow. But we want to put them back in and also add some additional ones. So Mr. Nomel gave us approval to go out and survey the parking lot to find where we think additional ones would be beneficial. And I think that's all.
Question.
Yeah.
So is it in the actual parking spaces where the students and teachers park? We're not talking in front of the building?
Yeah, just right in the middle of it because the speed limit I think is supposed to be 10 or 15 miles an hour and some kids just go much faster than that.
Okay.
You might want to, last year I met with a lot of students about the parking lots, and I know they also met with Mr. Nolte,
Okay.
our director of O&M. You might want to reach out to him because he did some work looking at the traffic flow in the parking lot also. So
Okay.
it might be helpful
Right,
to
thanks.
speak to him.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would just do like a walkthrough with him because
Yeah.
they're engineers, and so you don't want to come up with a recommendation. I mean, it's great to have the student input, but it'd be
Yeah.
also important to have
Definitely.
his expertise, so.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I have a few different things. I'd like to first recognize Tim Kramer from NYSBA, who is here to present a plaque honoring Ms. Lynn Lenhart. So do you want to?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I probably don't need the mic.
But we want you to use it just because
it goes on.
they're videotaping
For
it.
the videotape.
Okay, breaking the rules already. I'm Tim Creamer. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State School Boards Association. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here, obviously, to recognize a past president of the New York State School Board Association and a proud fixture of the Bethlehem Board of Education for many, many years, Lynn Lenhart. But this plaque doesn't go to Lynn Lenhart. She's got her plaque already. This plaque actually goes to this Board of Education in recognition of the fact that you've supported Lynn all these years as she served on our Board of Directors. And I want to also thank you for the work that you do. Our organization is challenged with a lot of issues these days, and we call upon people like Lynn and our members to help us through thinking of things having to do with public education and standards and curriculum and testing, things like school safety, mental health issues, drugs and opioids, staffing issues, budgetary issues, taxing issues, community relations. These are complicated times. And if anybody thinks that it's easy to be in your seat, they're dead wrong. I've been doing this for a long time, and I cannot think of a time when it's been more complicated, more challenging, and I hope more rewarding to be on a Board of Education than it is right now. I also am really glad to see all these students here. As we've unfortunately seen this horrible circumstances have come out of Florida, one of the things that has happened that gives me some hope has been kind of a renewed sense of civic engagement. And you've seen students coming forward with their voice and demanding changes and going up against people who we've all not had the courage to go up against before. So I'm proud of that. And I'm very proud to be in this room here tonight and to be with you folks. And Lynn, I want you to know that you have been an extraordinary president for the New York State School Boards Association, extraordinary board member. I want to read this. This is presented to the Bethlehem Central School District in appreciation for your support of Lynn Lenhart as an outstanding member of the New York State School Boards Association Board of Directors from 2002 to 2017. I don't think anybody ever served our Board of Directors as long as Lynn did. So thank you, Lynn, and congratulations. I am going to present this to the president, and hopefully you'll find a place, a visible place in honor to hang this.
Lynn, you should go.
Wait.
Thank you.
Get Lynn in there, too.
Yeah, come on, we're going to get everybody in here. All right.
Yeah.
And Lynn, I understand you have a friend in the audience here, is that correct? Over here, gentlemen.
What did she say?
Would I get a photo of you and Lynn?
Actually, this was our board attorney. Roger Fritzie was a board attorney for how many years? 33. 33.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you, Tim, for coming and presenting this award to the Bethlehem School Board. We appreciate it, and we appreciate Lynn tremendously, so thank you.
Okay, I still have a few other things.
All right, keep going.
Okay, I'd like to echo Josh's comments and thank the Bethlehem Community Fund. As he said, they made a very large donation of $15,000 to the Weekend Backpack Program, so we're very appreciative of that donation. A couple of other announcements. We had 14 students who are in our high school robotics club. This is the first time this year. They participated and did very well in Queensbury, and the Team A will be competing in the Northern New York State Championship on Sunday, March 11th, and there was an article I saw in the Spotlight recently. And I understand they have to get a robot to stack cones for the competition. We also have 6 Bethlehem High School seniors that have been named as finalists for the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Competition. They're Jason Hart, Emma Kranick, Anna Perry, Denali Rels, Emma Whalen, and Alan Joe. And as National Merit finalists, these students now have the opportunity to compete for 7,400 National Merit Awards and scholarships, and they'll be judged and reviewed later this spring. And whoever is a winner will be notified beginning in May. So we'll keep you posted on that. Speaking of school safety, the high school flashing lights were activated today on Delaware Ave, if you came in that way. We've been waiting for those for a while, so I'd like to thank Greg Nolte for his persistence in getting those installed, so maybe that will help with traffic. I also wanted to comment on the National School Walkout that Tim was discussing, as well as school safety. Tomorrow I have a meeting with all the principals to discuss this. I know several students have met with Mr. Domel and Mr. Klugman already about some options to consider to help advocate for things that students are interested in. And we certainly want to support our students and help create an educational opportunity as well as use this opportunity to teach and encourage students to be willing to advocate for the things that they believe in. We also have a safety meeting set up with all of our district administration and the Bethlehem Police to again review all of our safety plans and procedures. As you recall, we've updated our safety plans. They're in line with the state police guidance. We've done several evacuation drills over the last couple of years. I think, Charmaine, you attended one of those. We have another one planned in the spring for Slingerlands. And we continue to work with the Bethlehem Police as well as our BOCES safety specialist for training. We'll continue to work on that and do that. So we have a meeting next week. I'll have a little bit more of an update for the board and the community at that point. And lastly, I want to just ask Judy to comment on the Clarksville, the seeker information that we just received. If you want to just share with the board what they might need to consider.
So we received a notice, as is required by law, from Albany County regarding a state environmental quality review that would be necessary for them to put a garage at the rear of the school and to do some minor improvements within the school post-closing, assuming that we get to that point. Albany County is requesting permission to serve as the lead agency, which means that they would coordinate the review and make sure that all of the environmental type considerations were addressed appropriately. So they have a rather lengthy application. We had shared that with our attorneys for them to review, and they had informed us that if we are agreeable to the county serving as the lead agency for this review, we can either put it on the agenda at our next meeting, March 7th, to say that we agree to that officially, and then that would essentially authorize Christine as board president to sign that. Or alternatively, if there is no response by March 16th, which is 30 days from the date that they sent the letter out, they automatically become the lead agency. So we were hoping to just get a sense from the board of, is that something that you wish to see and have on the formal agenda, or given the relatively lower level nature of it, are you okay with just letting it lapse?
What's the benefit to letting them do it? What's the downside to letting them do it?
In checking with council, I mean, it needs to occur in order to comply with law, and it is typically handled by, in this case, the county, because they're the ones who are leading the work that's done. So it has to be done, and all we're consenting to is to let the county be the leader of that review process.
So there's no benefit aside from the fact that if you vote on it to approve it, the next meeting, they don't have to wait till March 16th for the approval, or for it to just happen.
If they didn't do it, who would? Or are they the only agency that could?
Well, another agency would have to step up, basically challenge them for that, and again, given the nature of it, that's typically not done, according to council.
So the question is, do you want it on for a board action?
How does this affect the other information?
It doesn't. At this
Okay.
point. I mean, at this point, it doesn't affect it.
And the application essentially talks about a 12,000 square foot storage structure, which would be placed in the rear of the building, where they're going to store what they're describing as specialized vehicles and equipment. And then they talk about interior renovations to maximize space and upgrade technology and electrical systems. So this is all in keeping with what they had described to us over the last year as we were reviewing their request to purchase the building. And if they're essentially asking for any feedback or to raise any issues of concern, and there was nothing that was flagged within the application as a concern based on our attorneys reviewing it.
So are you fine with not putting it on the agenda? Is that where you're comfortable with?
I'm comfortable with that. But either way is
That's fine.
fine as well.
Would
It's
you-
really
I
a
personally
preference.
think we should put it on the board agenda so that the board actually makes the approval, rather than have them
Just wait it out.
just
Right.
decide after a certain period of time.
If it doesn't hurt, we can just put it on the
Right,
agenda.
there's no
Everybody
downside.
comfortable with that?
It's just interesting to me that here we, approved the sale last June. They've been holding us up on the sale of the property, and now they're going ahead, doing some of the changes while not actually approving it, the sale.
I can't explain all, I can simply explain the resolution. Or the
Well, I
request.
guess that
one
goes
thing-
to my, that raises a
Yeah.
question, though. If we're not certain with what's going on right now, are we comfortable with all the changes?
Oh, well, but they're not, if I understand seeker review, it's to make sure that the environmental issues are either addressed or mitigated, but it's not that any changes actually occur. It's just a study.
Right.
So
Okay.
they're making no
Gotcha.
changes
Gotcha.
currently. This just allows them to do the study now rather than do
Versus
the
later.
study later.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
Right, no changes until they purchase
Right.
the building. But this is
Correct.
like a study, an impact.
Yes,
study.
yes.
I would put it on the agenda.
I'm fine with
Agreed.
that.
Okay,
All right.
all right, thanks. So we will do that.
I have a couple of questions. The speed limit in front of the high school, has that, I was under the impression it was going down from 35 to 25, or is it
No.
not? It's the same, it just has flashing lights. Okay. And there's also, I think you may have mentioned it, but just to let the public know, there is a district-wide safety team that meets on a regular basis through the year that includes board members, administrators, the safety consultant from BOCES, where we discuss different plans and the schedule for evacuation drills.
Right, so we have district-wide safety team, and then every building has their own safety team that meets regularly as well.
Right, and they send representatives to the district-wide. team.
Correct.
Regarding that safety meeting that you'll be having, I was just hoping that we could get some feedback from teachers themselves about how the lockdown drills are going within their classrooms, whether they feel they need any additional support, if whether or not their classroom, it's not working well in their classroom, what else they need, whether special education classrooms perhaps need something else. I'm not sure, but that is something that I saw that could be a possible concern is students who are in special education perhaps need additional supports throughout these lockdown drills. And just, I would like to hear from teachers what they think, age-appropriate explanations are for what the lockdown drills are, and B, what the emotional impact seems to be from kids after these lockdown drills, whether or not there's any anxiety about them, or whether or not kids are okay with them. I would just like to hear some feedback about that as time goes on.
I would like to get other board members' thoughts on it. Like, is that something that you feel that you would want to receive back from teachers?
Well, I don't know if I'd feed them for teachers. I think maybe the principals would go through, or somehow through the administration.
Well, the teachers would go
Go
to
to the
the principals if
principals, and
there
then
was
they bring it to you,
concern,
yeah.
so.
But
Have
it
we
is-
ever gotten a
It is
concern?
important information if we're, having
Yeah.
this focus on mental health. It's certainly something that really should be looked at.
Yeah. Could you maybe ask administrative council
Yeah.
to somehow poll their teachers and give the using the kinds of questions that Meredith asked as
Yeah.
a jumping off point, and then bringing that information to
Yeah.
us? And if there's something else you want to hear, then we can.
No, just, I'd just love to
Yeah.
hear from the teachers how the drills are actually being implemented, whether or not we can do anything to improve the classroom by classroom experience.
Have we gotten any feedback from any of the administrators as to how the lockdown drills are going, if there's any difficulties?
So when we do lockdown drills, the teachers don't open the doors until an administrator goes and unlocks it. Or we have the Bethlehem Police help us with many of the lockdown drills too, because they can see things that might be a problem that potentially we can't. We've also had the sheriff in before. So typically, if there's a concern, the teacher would let the principal know or administrator know right then, and then we would follow up and address it. It's always kind of a work in progress. So this year, we just got the pull-down shades to cover the windows, where before people were having to put construction paper up and things like that. So I think that's made it a little bit easier, but we're constantly, every time you do a lockdown drill, you want to find out where are potentially problem areas, or are there any classes that are a problem? So, but I can certainly ask the principals if they've heard anything specific.
I do think Meredith brings up a good point, though, and there's been a lot of news coverage on the mental health aspect of lockdowns, especially in light of, the recent activities and throughout the last couple of years and the media attention surrounding it. And is it having, I know we have to do lockdown drills,
Yeah.
but is there an effect? And I'm thinking like at the earlier level, elementary school levels, is there any type of effect? If
And
there's
so if that's just something that our guidance counselors can have an eye on and perhaps do some additional work with some kids or all kids.
I think that would be something that would come from the teacher that maybe they wouldn't necessarily mention to the building administrator. Maybe they got a parent from parent email, or a student said something, but it might not be raised to the level of a administrator, possibly.
But probably, they would likely refer it to the school counselor if that came up.
I mean, we've been doing these for, ever since the SAVE legislation after Columbine, and it's become routine, like fire drills,
Yeah.
when you do lockdown drills.
But I think there was a big gap between Columbine and some recent activity, and they just seem to be becoming more frequent. So I don't know, we know the student body, the anxiety levels have picked up on multiple levels. So is this just another catalyst?
And as students become more media savvy and younger students hear more and more on the news, like we have 6-year-olds who know something happened in a school and kids got shot, and now all of a sudden I'm hiding behind my desk. I think because kids are more media savvy these days, there may be more
Potential.
knowledge, but also more anxiety. So I think we should just be asking our teachers and our school counselors about that.
Sure.
I will say, too, on the issue of safety, over the course of, I think, since I've been on the board, we've had 2, if not 3 bonds. And for each of those bond projects, there have been measures to increase safety, although we haven't necessarily said this one is specifically
Right.
related to increasing safety around any kind of incident. There have been several improvements made in consultation with the police and
Right.
O&M, so that will continue. It's just part of it's rolled right into the bond project, so.
That's a good point.
The other issue I wanted to bring up is I received an email that I forwarded to the Board of Education for Jennifer Gallagher, and she indicated I could share that with the public, is do we have programs where we can get the students involved in possibly recognizing potential issues with the student body, because they're the students who interact with these people every day. I know we have like mental health initiatives and different programs. What do we have along the lines where the students could be involved in potential recognition of an issue? That's what her email was going to. There's different foundations. I can't remember the actual name. I think it was the Hope Something Foundation.
The Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook Foundation, yeah. I didn't know if we had anything similar, what the board's thoughts were on that email.
Well, a lot of the programs that our counselors are doing kind of, stem around various aspects of mental health issues, and if there's a concern, who do you go to, whether it be yourself or a friend.
I was just thinking that maybe we should look at possibly some sort of program where it's at the student level that they can be in control of, that would bring awareness for them if they want to raise an issue up, instead of the other way around where the counselors are recognizing a particular student.
No, not the counsel, that's what I'm saying, like, doing some of the mental health education our counselors are doing is teaching kids not only to be advocates for themselves, but if they're concerned about a classmate, who can you go
Right.
to get them help or to report that?
But is that a formal program where it integrates all the students in our school? Like elementary, middle school, the counselors are reaching all of these students? And it's
Well, elementary and middle school, we have more consistency. Obviously, at the high school level, it's,
Right.
just much different. But K-5, all the counselors are doing the same type of lessons. Kristen Connors implemented that, and next year we'll be including more of the mental health piece, and same with 6 through 8. 9 through 12 obviously is a very different, that's not structured that.
Right, it's
same.
structured differently, and
Right.
I think that's where I think this is geared towards, is the high school student body, where usually it's students that are older that recognize, like, students that are isolated or seem to be by themselves, and do we have a program where we can allow the students to know where they're supposed to talk to counselors, or what they could do to make a difference. I guess that's where I think that email was going towards. And I don't know if we have that, and I was just thinking maybe it's something we want to talk about, at some point. It doesn't have to be this evening, but
Well,
I
it would
don't-
be something that I think the administrators and the counselors should take, look at and
Right,
consider.
right.
In
To
what they're
look-
doing, because we don't know all that they're doing.
Sure. Or maybe the SJ, who is Josh? The SJA could, as part of your discussion with Mr. Domel, is how do we increase student awareness of, how do we help each other?
Right, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is how can the students themselves
Yeah.
have a program or work together to recognize potential issues? It's great that we have it on the counselor level,
Yeah.
and they're working with students, but I want the students to be able to advocate and recognize, because they're the ones that interact with the kids every day, their peers, so they would most likely be the people who would recognize that there was a potential issue. So if we don't have something, I would strongly encourage that we look at something, whether it's talking to the student senate or just to see if they want to talk about a program that they think would be helpful within the school for them. I don't know.
Well, I will say that I've seen a presentation by the Sandy Hook Promise group, and it's very powerful, and they
Yeah.
gear it towards, various age levels. And I think it would be worth talking maybe to BOU or the Community Fund to see if they would be willing to support doing something maybe through the PTAs or something, where we could either, I don't know whether it would be at each school or what, but they're very effective in both teaching students how to deal with their emotions and how to, deal with if something were to happen, but also working with the staff and the administrators on how to help the students cope.
Yeah, BOU might be a good group.
Or if you and the principals could review the material, and, because I know you're looking at other training materials specifically around issues of diversity,
Right.
What would be the best fit here, and what
Right.
might you consider bringing?
Right.
In consultation with them.
And I definitely acknowledge that we're doing a lot as a school district with mental health initiatives. Over the last couple of years, it's been a tremendous focus, and we've put a lot of resource into it, so I definitely appreciate all that we've done so far to date, and it's been a lot. I was just looking at it from a student perspective, and what can we do to help them, have something in place for themselves. So.
Okay.
All right, for the Board of Education report, I went to the hockey sectional game on Wednesday over break. That was a lot of fun. I didn't realize how great our hockey team was, and it was very fun to watch. Not fun for the other team, but definitely fun for our team.
Did you go last night?
No, I went Wednesday. I didn't go last night, but I'm
Because
assuming
they
we
won.
won, yeah.
Yeah,
Such a
it's the first time
Ever.
our team
As a
has
hockey
won
player,
section.
yeah.
Excellent.
Kudos to
I missed
them.
that would have been so good. So I will go next year because it was a lot of fun. Also, just for the public, the Beauty and Beast tickets go on sale to the public Saturday, March 10th. So I expect all 4 shows to sell out. So definitely make sure if you want to get tickets that you get to one of the first public sales. And lastly, I didn't tell the PIG students that you are required to stay till 9 o'clock unless the meeting gets out earlier. And once we adjourn the meeting, come up, make sure you sign the sheets or get your meeting form signed so you can present it to your teachers. But 9 o'clock, or if we adjourn before that, is your requirement, and we'll stop the meeting if we're not finished at 9 o'clock. And that's all I have.
I had the chance to stop by the middle school after school today and watch some of the Odyssey of the Mind dress rehearsal that was taking place. They have their regional competition coming up on Saturday, and I wish them all lots of luck because I saw a tremendous amount of effort and creative energy and
clearly a lot of time that was put into the problem solving that these kids were working on.
Excellent.
Is it at Shen?
It's at Shen.
And I know the girls' basketball team is going into their final this Saturday afternoon, I believe, at Hudson Valley. I know Mr. Key said if you are interested in going, to contact him. Wish them good luck. And I know several track athletes are going on to the state meet. That's going to be run on
Yes.
Friday and Saturday. Good luck to them.
Well, on a different note, I have something to report to all of you in light of receiving the plaque. At the same time, I want to announce that I will not be running for reelection. This is my 30th year. I've served for 10 terms. It's a long time. I've seen staff come and go. They, we hired them, they retired, and I'm still here. So, so I figured it's time. And just have seen so many changes. We talked about some of the safety issues. I remember, freely going into the elementary school, no questions, there was never any problem with entering schools or leaving schools. In fact, someone once counted the number of spots in this high school. Students, you'll appreciate this. There were 84 entrances or exits of places where people could enter or leave the school. And certainly, whether it's the construction, we have the new wings that, Meredith, you probably remember walking outside. Well, you don't need to do that, nor can you anymore, because the doors are locked. We went from 84 basically down to the one entrance where people have to sign in at the front. That was a big change, and of course, the addition of all the other safety features that have occurred over the years. Mental health issues, too. I remember the first time I heard about elementary students being depressed. I always thought, at the elementary level, kids are just love learning, they're so excited and happy, and to find out that, depression is a concern, just really startled me. This is, some years ago. So where we used to have one social worker for the whole district, we now have social workers in every building, plus elementary counselors in all our elementary schools, which we didn't have years ago, to deal with a lot of the mental health issues. Probably, I won't talk about all the changes. One of the things I ran on at the time was class size issue, because my kids were in classes from kindergarten, like 25 kids. In fact, they had 29 in fifth grade. They were always in very large classes at the elementary level. So it took some time, and we did reduce class sizes, and all of you have benefited, your children have benefited from the smaller class sizes. Mine didn't, but again, when you serve on a board, you're serving the whole community, not just, your own interests. I have to say, over time, I've always considered, trying to always think of the students and making any decisions. Sometimes it's difficult, especially on the budget issues, but need to always have our ultimate consumers in mind. Lastly, actually, I want to thank the community for supporting me for those 10 terms. I appreciate the fact that they were willing to, keep me here for all this time. And I hope that, people will come out, try and, serve the board. As Tim mentioned before, it is rewarding. There are times that are more rewarding than others. There are times that are very frustrating, and when issues come up and how to deal with them. But, it's important. We have a great community, and we want to prepare our students the best way we can for the future. So I hope, people are interested in taking out a petition and running for the board. And again, I thank you here and also in the community for all your support.
And we thank you.
We obviously thank you for your service, and it is a tremendous loss for the Bethlehem School Board that you won't be returning. Your knowledge is irreplaceable, and I have your phone number, so that doesn't mean that you're off the hook when we don't know something, because I know you will always know the answer to it. So.
And I can send emails too.
And you can send emails too, but then I can't talk to you, so thank you for everything that you've done for the Bethlehem Board of Education.
Thank you, Christine.
If I might say something, I've served only about a third of your term with you. Every year, you have taught me something. This year, I learned from you grace and poise and commitment. And so I just want to appreciate that. When I first came on the board, I actually interviewed Lynn and another board member before running because I wanted to know about the board. And in my early years, she would always be reining me in, budget, policy, and Superintendent Charmaine, when I strayed from the path. And so I do want to appreciate you for being a mentor to me and for your incredible contribution and for always, always teaching me something.
Okay, thank you.
One question, Lynn, where will your vast archive of board materials be donated to?
Oh, I have some things I'll bring in. I'll let you deal.
The Lynn Lenhart Library?
Right.
We'll
And
have
she
to
knows
build
where it
another
is,
wing.
too. Those boxes, you know where they are.
Yep. Yep.
Does anybody else have anything for the Board of Education report this evening?
The lab school barbecue.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, and I have a lab school student, that's so shame on me.
Well, the lab school barbecue is 3:30?
Takeout starts at 3:30 and dine-in starts at 4:30. See, I do know the answer to that.
What's the date?
This
Saturday.
Saturday, this
And there'll be
Saturday?
lots of goodies and raffle baskets and
Everything's
kids
happening
serving,
on
and it will be a lot of fun. And it raises a tremendous amount of money for those students who are unable to afford some of the field trip experiences. And it's our biggest fundraiser of the year, and it's usually a very good turnout. Hopefully, the weather will hold out. Today was beautiful. I saw some tennis kids out there today, so that was nice. And hopefully, we will have the same luck on Saturday. So, thank you for that good reminder.
I already ordered mine.
I ordered mine too.
I have to give you tickets. Mike, do you have anything, or? Okay.
Well, I'll just add one more thing.
Oh, sure.
I still think it's important. I was able to attend part of the Capitol Conference, or NISBA Conference, and there are a lot of issues out there that we really need to be advocating for down in the legislature. I mean, there are very unseemly things that the governor included in the budget that are probably more difficult to explain, so I think that was intentional, so that, you know, people wouldn't, the average person wouldn't realize that, you know, kind of actual cuts that are in there. So we need to be proactive in that respect. I think most of our local legislators are very attuned to it, but still need to be out there advocating.
Thank you.
Could we back up just for a minute? Josh mentioned speed limits in the parking lot out front. What is the speed limit? Because he gave a number, and I always thought it was like 5 miles an hour in a parking lot. And the number I think Josh had mentioned was more like 10, I think.
Is it even, it's not marked out
It's not
there,
marked, is it?
That's nothing.
Is there a speed limit? I mean, because I'm thinking maybe signs might just help.
Slow
Slow down.
pedestrians.
Yeah, like really slow.
Many
down.
pedestrians.
I don't know if there's actually, I don't think we have any designated speed. I mean, signage might help, that's a good point.
It might be something to think about, either putting up 5 miles an hour or something
Right.
like that, because you really don't want to be doing
Right.
anything much more than that in a parking
Right.
lot, especially with students around.
Right. I do think that might be helpful, a speed sign.
I think it is, but to be honest with you, for everyone who tailgates me in front of the middle school and St. Thomas, where the district actually had to put up flashing lights because the signs alone weren't enough, the community has to be responsible for the safety of our students. Because I see parents ripping in through here every morning, or the back parking lot dropping off their kids. So, you know, I think the signs are a great thing, but the community has got to take ownership for this and be responsible.
Yeah. I'm thinking it's in the parking lot, though, when the students are leaving and coming, and students are walking to the school and walking back
Yeah.
to,
They might see it, but I'm just saying, I'm talking about the parents.
yeah, no.
Yeah,
I'm talking more
Yeah.
student drivers that
Yeah.
might not be
Yeah, who's
Pick
not
up,
the kids?
drop off.
paying
in the
attention at
mornings.
You would say
7:30 in the morning when they're running late,
Anyway,
Right,
anyway.
so.
okay.
All right, tonight's proposed tonight's budget meeting is on proposed transportation. Our Director of Transportation, Cindy Jurwitz, couldn't be here. She took ill this evening. So Judy Kehoe is going to stand in her place and give us the presentation on our transportation. Thank you for filling in.
This is our second budget presentation, And I'm going to start by just giving you a quick recap of our last meeting in case anybody had missed it, and then we'll start to talk about transportation. And then probably when you've had about enough of listening to me talk, we'll turn it over to Ray Nardelli to talk about technology. Okay. So at our initial budget meeting, we projected that our baseline revenues would be just shy of $97.1 million. We've kept, of course, the school tax amount flat, knowing that that will be one of the key decisions that we'll have to make later on in the process. Our state aid, based on what we know now, is slightly below this current year's amount. We'll wait and see what comes when the state budget is adopted and potentially adjust that as may be required. And then the other revenue is higher. We talked about the availability of a debt service reserve. You'll see that on the agenda tonight as well, to approve that transfer for the current year, 17-18. Our expenditures, where this reflects maintaining the same programs that we have in place in 17-18, rolling that forward into 18-19. And those totals are at $100.4 million. Again, as we go through each of these areas in the coming weeks, we'll look at any, more of the details and if there are any proposed increases or decreases in those numbers. That gives us a baseline gap of $3.3 million. So our mission is to make our revenues equal our expenditures. We have a number of options that we will be able to use to make this happen. And we've listed out what those are. And again, as we make those final decisions, we will finalize those amounts as well. One of the things that you had requested additional information on last time was a follow-up from the State of the Schools presentation that Ms. Monroe had done, where we had shown the declines in our staff in, I'll call them the early years of the recession, when we were faced with significant reductions in state aid and really had to control our costs in order to fit them within the dwindling revenues that we had. And we had close to 200 reductions in staff over that 5-year period. And we've slowly increased that judiciously through the budget review process in each of the last 4 years. This chart shows how those numbers have changed, and we've broken it out between instructional in the light green bar and non-instructional support staff on the blue. This chart shows head count. It is not full-time equivalents. Starting with instructional, where we're close to head count and FTE, we're really only off about 5 positions between the two. Those increases have been in things like almost 7.6 positions that were added at the elementary level, where we had the response to intervention programs, where we were really trying to stress reading skills and helping the students with that. We had added a K-12 counseling supervisor position to the budget, aligning with our needs to increase supports for students who were dealing with emotional and mental health issues. We had added a tech coach position as well. We had increased our guidance staff by 1.6 FTE. We had added a behavior specialist. We added about 1.5 FTE in technology staff, again, trying to keep up with all of the burgeoning use of technology within the classrooms. In that time period, we had also added back a library position. We did do some section reductions, again, depending on changes in enrollment at the various buildings, but we really had a net gain of 13 positions in that time frame. On the non-instructional side, those increases largely came in supports for students. So within that 4-year period, we had added about 19 aides to students with disabilities, again, based on the CSE review process and needs for those students. And similarly, we had increased the number of bus attendants by 6 positions. We had added some additional bus drivers. Recall 2 years ago when we had wanted to reduce the number of elementary students on the buses, we had added 5 new routes. Just last year, we had added 2 other routes to reduce ride times in Clarksville. We had added an assistant transportation supervisor position back in the budget within that time frame. We had also added 1.0 FTE in our nursing staff in that time period. So I know the years tend to blend together, but through that review process of requested increases and/or reductions based on enrollment, that's sort of a high-level overview of what those changes in positions were in that time period. Are there any questions on this slide before I move on to the next?
No, thank you for
No,
putting it
thank you.
together.
Okay, you're welcome. Transportation, trying to pinch hit for Cindy Jurowitz. She was so disappointed because this is one of the highlights for her to get to come to the board and to talk about the transportation department. I know she is so proud of the efforts of her staff. It's a large group of employees between all of our drivers and our attendants and our mechanics, and that's like her work family, and so she's so proud of their efforts, and this is really her opportunity to come up and talk about the great work that they do. Here to kind of back me up in case there's any really tough questions that you have about transportation tonight, we have the assistant supervisors within the transportation department. We have John Bizik, and we have Vince Catalfamo and John Hazelton. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming out this evening to help support the program. We're going to focus initially on things that were changed within the budget for the 17-18 school year. Last year, the board had approved an increase from a 0.6 FTE assistant supervisor position up to a 1.0 because we were having difficulty hiring anybody for that 0.6 position. And we have been thrilled that we were able to bring Vince on board in December of this year. Vince is working in the dispatch office, which is right at the front of the main transportation floor. So it is a hopping place because that's where all the drivers are coming in and out as they're starting and ending their routes, and all of the attendants as well. So some of the main functions that he is working on is, of course, meeting all of the drivers as they're coming in. There's an assessment that needs to occur as per the CDL requirements, just making sure that everybody is ready for driving the school bus safely. If there are any concerns that are raised by either the drivers or perhaps parents that are calling into dispatch that need any kind of follow-up, that's something that Vince handles as well. Occasionally, we have some students who are not following the driver's instructions or perhaps creating issues with other students. So those types of matters, we have a process to communicate that back to the building principals. So Vince is helping out with that as well. You might think that the bulk of our routing changes are going on in the beginning of the school year. The bulk are occurring then, but every week there are numerous changes that come in. Many of them are from changes in daycare needs that parents may have. We do allow day variant schedules. It could be simply, I want them to go to, the aunt on Tuesday and the uncle on Thursday, and then I'm changing it on this date. So all of that requires effort and coordination because you have to update the route cards and communicate that back to the buildings as well. So that's a key area that Vince has been helping. And transportation starts really early in the morning. So like I know John Hazelton has probably been here since about 6 a.m. this morning. Then John and Vince come in, and Vince has been taking the late shift. So he's here until all of the students have been safely dropped off back at home, and then dealing with any other issues that may be arising relative to trips in the evening, athletic trips, and things like that. So he's been a tremendous asset to the department in just the few months that he's been here. He's been very experienced in transportation issues, so he's been a quick study and a very able pair of hands added to that office. So on behalf of Cindy and myself, thank you for approving that addition to this year's budget. One of the other follow-up items that we had was how were we doing with the addition of those 2 new routes for Clarksville? And as designed, the ride times have decreased significantly. The longest ride time is 37 minutes for the most part, other than I asterisked. We have 2 students who live farthest out. They're on Dunbar Hollow Road, and they have a 47-minute ride time, and that's really a function of the distance for the bus to travel to drop them off. But those are the maximum times. When you look at the detailed route reports, you can see that many of the rides are 15, 20 minutes. Most are under that 30-minute mark. So it really has made a huge difference for those students and families. So again, thank you for that. That is in keeping with all of the other elementary routes. We had looked at that last year. We were around 50 minutes, and that has dropped down to somewhere between 40 to 50 minutes for almost all of the other elementary routes as well.
I would just like to jump in that I have spoken with a family from Clarksville whose kids were on very long bus routes before. They said this year has been a huge improvement in the mornings and in the afternoons, and just in terms of the quality of time they can spend with their kids, and their kids aren't as exhausted when they come home. So I will say that from that anecdotal evidence, it is working.
Wonderful, and that was the hope when the board had approved that. So, and we'll keep that up. As to the numbers, you will note that there's close to $172,000 reduction in the transportation budget going into next year. And that's from a combination of factors. You'll note that the salary numbers are lower. We have budgeted for the same number of positions, the 17-18 school year into the 18-19 school year. But as part of the structure on the contracts, as newer employees come in to work at the district, there's a separate salary scale that has lower salaries. So as staff is retiring and new staff are coming on board, what we're starting to see are some of those savings are coming into the salary line for transportation. The other big adjustments relate to fuel for the most part, and some of the bus parts and supplies. The fear of the unknown is ever present because we have a crystal ball that we look into trying to predict where fuel prices are going to be going. And knowing that we like to budget conservatively, we've always had a buffer in there. But each year, as we close out that year, we have continued to have positive budget variances, money left over in those fuel lines. So we looked at that really closely and gave some assurances that if the fuel prices change beyond what we're expecting, that we recognize that we would have to find other funds to cover that. But we are pretty comfortable just looking at some prior year actual results that we can dial those cost estimates back in this coming year. So that results in the overall reduction in the budget. This is just some detail so that you can see, again, these are numbers of employees. So this does not include the number of substitutes. We actually have more trained drivers than just what is listed here, but these are the board-appointed drivers and bus attendants and other staff. So we do have, again, this is all driven by contractual salary amounts. We do make provisions for substitutes and any extra hours and overtime. Many of those items are associated with athletic trips, field trips, things like that. It's not always overtime. Again, overtime only kicks in when employees work more than 40 hours in a given week, so a good chunk of that dollar amount just is extra hours worked.
Judy, I have a question. I mean, it's interesting that the amount designated for substitutes is going down, but the overtime is going up. Is there is there a problem or trouble finding substitutes? And that actually drivers
That is
are,
interesting.
drivers are actually putting in for more overtime because we can't get subs?
In some instances, yes. I mean, anytime we have extended medical leaves or illnesses or things like that, I mean, that will fluctuate from one year to the next. So the fluctuations that you're seeing going into 18-19 are really more to align it more closely with what we've seen in the actual numbers. Bethlehem and every other district in the capital region struggles to find qualified drivers. And I think it's a function of three primary things. One, it's a lot of responsibility for these drivers when they have a busload of young lives that they take very seriously, and that just really is not something that everybody is willing to commit to. Secondly, the hours can be challenging. I mean, they're working very early. They're coming to the bus garage 5:45, 6 o'clock, 6:15 in order to get out there. They work for a few hours, then they have a gap in the middle of the day, and then have to come back again. So that schedule doesn't work for everybody. And then lastly, the requirements to have your CDL, the training that's required from DMV, has always been a very high bar, and they've just raised that bar even higher. So the training that's required, and then the exam that has to be taken, they have to parallel park the big yellow bus. And that's not a job for everybody. So I think.
My own car.
Yeah, and they don't have, special mirrors or fender guards or any of that. So it's a difficult job, and I think that is part of what you're seeing in terms of that difficulty.
But she raises an interesting issue, and I'd like, actually, the district to take a week, since we're meeting again next week, to make sure that if there's any additional information you want to add to that after you talk with Mrs. Jervis about why that situation is.
Sure.
I have a question about the supervisors and office clerical line, the 5 employees. How many of those folks are supervisors and how many folks are clerical? Do you know?
For the supervisors, give me 1 second. So, of course, that includes Cindy as the director and John, and Vince. So that's the 4 supervisors for the department. And then Julie Martin is a part-time clerical person within that office. So that's within the supervisors and clerical. Okay?
So the clerical person is full-time or part-time?
Part-time.
How come it's 5 employees?
But remember, this is head count, not FTE.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Okay.
Judy, before you go on, I just want to backtrack for a minute to the prior slide. You had about a $21,000 difference between bus parts and supplies. Is that because we anticipate new buses will be less to maintain, or there's something else going on here?
We've really, I say we, transportation mechanic, the supervisor, has really done a great job working with Cindy to kind of find that right spot between new buses and old buses. Basically the question is, when do you sell a bus? And you're looking for that point when the mileage is getting up there, when it's starting to become more of a maintenance concern, when you're sinking more money into it for parts and repairs. That's certainly one of the indicators that we look at when they're making recommendations for which buses to replace. We have been able to extend that out from 10 years, what's the old standard on the larger buses, and that's been pushed out to 12 years. The only way that you're able to do that is through good maintenance. So we have the bus wash that helps with removing all of the salt and things that we have on the roads in the wintertime in the Northeast. And we have come in under. Again, they try to put a contingency in there because you don't know what the repairs are going to be. But looking at actual numbers, we've been able to bring that down. So it's well managed, and
So
we're
we're getting
comfortable
closer to
with
the sweet
reducing.
spot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So transportation has quite a bit of reimbursement aid that comes to it. So of that $6.2 million budget, There is close to $4.5 million that would come to it in the form of this reimbursement-based aid from state aid, and then also from the sale of the buses when the new ones come in and we sell the old ones. John Bizik does a lot of that work. We auction off those old buses, and I know he's put a lot of time trying to, although it's bid out, we have some districts who always want to know when our buses are up for sale because they know that they have been well-maintained and they're getting a good quality used bus. So even though it might have upwards of 100,000 miles on it and it might be 12 years old, it's still a good value for them. So the aid reimbursement that we get is currently about 63% of our allowable expenditures. So.
Just another bit of trivia. When I was first on the board, we received 90% reimbursement for transportation.
My, how times have changed.
Yes.
I would love 90% reimbursement on transportation, but
Yeah.
I'm not holding my breath yet. So, the bus replacement plan, we had spent a lot of time looking at this in the current year. And we have 133 large and small buses within the fleet. And there were a number of years where we had purchased fewer buses than we might otherwise feel we needed. And that was in recognition of the fact that times were tight and everybody needed to tighten their belts. But what that did was it caused a situation where we had this like pent-up need. And we're getting closer. We have finally seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and it is coming in 2022-23, assuming no drastic changes in terms of the needs of schools that we're going to or the number of miles that we're driving. The requests for this current year are for 15 buses. And looking at the numbers and kind of scheduling out based on the age of the buses, that pale green line is what we think we will need to request in each of the next 4 years. So we anticipate that we're going to be close to hitting it dead on, and we will be able to kind of reduce that annual request from 2022 to 23 and beyond.
I have a question. So you, the request is for 15, to purchase 15. Are you going to retire 15? How does that
Yes.
work? So you
Yes.
retire 15,
We
you
are buying 15
to
new,
replace them.
assuming it's approved by the board and approved by the community, and then we will sell off the old buses. So they're all identified on a spreadsheet in terms of, the mileage and the age and the ones that we think are time to move them off the fleet roster, if you will. So we are requesting 6 large buses. And again, I mentioned we've pushed that towards the upper limit of how long it's recommended to hold onto these larger buses. They're going to be right around 12 years of service, and they're at about 88,000 miles now. And of course, by the time this comes through, they're going to be even higher. They're typically closer to 100,000 miles by the time they are sold. We also are looking for 9 small buses, 3 Suburbans, and 6 30-passenger buses. Those are the buses that are used most frequently for special needs students who, based on their IEPs, do better in a smaller bus. And those are also the buses that are used to take fewer numbers of children to locations outside of the district. So rather than sending the larger buses, we'll tend to use those smaller buses. So I've noted the years of service and the mileage currently. Based on this review, this is the recommendation or the request that we replace 15 buses. The cost for that, based on the state contract pricing, would be a not-to-exceed amount of $1,190,000. As with any capital expenditure, we're required to have the board approve it, and then we're required to have the community approve it. So if you approve it, it would then go on the ballot as an item for the public to consider as well. Okay. And that is it for the transportation presentation. So
Do you need the approval tonight? I
No.
mean, does a legal notice have to go out?
That will be at the March meeting.
Next meeting.
So,
Next meeting.
It's on
Yeah.
there for the board's approval.
so you have time to think about it and think up any other questions.
Is there any other
I have one.
information,
Yeah.
for transportation that you want?
The question I had is just on the 15 replacement buses. Are we swapping out the same exact 6 large, 3 8-passenger, and 6 30-passenger?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That would be the plan.
And, I just had a question, you may not know the answer, but I just wanted to address it, regarding fuel usage and the number of stops the bus is making. Specifically, I wanted to know what standards we use in determining how many bus stops specifically we do for the elementary students. I just know within my neighborhood, the bus stops on each side of a block, a pretty short block, so being about every 4 houses, the bus stops. And I was just wondering whether or not, how we come up with how many bus stops we have, and whether or not we could increase our fuel efficiency if we had fewer stops.
What drives that decision in terms of the location of those stops is not so much governed by the fuel usage, but by what we think is the appropriate distance for children to walk to their stops. So the younger kids have a shorter distance to their bus stop. The middle schoolers have a half mile, and the high schoolers are up to a mile. The reason why you're seeing those stops in your neighborhood is because students cannot walk more than 1/10 of a mile up to their stops. We're bringing them out from the side streets up to the main road, and if we were to try to shift them into a single stop, say, at one point midway, they would be beyond that 1/10 of a mile distance. So that's what drives those stops. We get, I think the most frequently asked call that comes in from parents at the beginning of the year has to do with the bus stop placements for the elementary students, and there's a lot of concerns. We hear, well, why can't it be in my driveway, because that's where my child, I feel like they're the safest. I can't see my child from the stop. I mean, there are a number of concerns, as you'd imagine, with the younger children. So that's where the 1/10 of a mile standard has come from, and that's why that's
It's
used.
actually a board policy.
Yes.
And that was changed a few years ago, but elementary was not changed. So middle and high school, as Judy referenced, was increased to half a mile, in high school to 1 mile. State ed technically allows students to walk up to 3 miles. I don't know of any district that does that, except maybe city districts. But the elementary walking distance was not changed.
But I do think they pull kids out of the driveways, because my driveway used to be a stop, and onto the roads, basically.
Bringing them up to,
Because there seem to be,
Corners.
there are fewer buses, at least crisscrossing throughout the neighborhood, and more at, I know you live on a corner, she's in my neighborhood, so your bus may be that area, and I see more kids at corners of roads in driveways as opposed to,
Right.
they used to go down my road and stop in, literally every driveway. Now the kids go to the ends of the street and
Right.
stand in the driveway.
Do they still pick up kindergartners door to door? They
no,
used
but
to.
they do require that a parent or guardian be present to get the kindergartner at the end
Okay.
of the day before they drop them off. Remember that every K through 5 student is eligible for transportation per that board policy, number 8411. So theoretically, you could have a house right next door to the stop or right next door to the school, and they would be eligible for transportation. But it's not, Cindy had done some review of information out there through professional associations about the cost of fuel when you're stopping more frequently, and it was a very negligible amount. So, again, it's driven more so by that policy and the comfort of the community than by the fuel. A good question, though.
Any other questions on transportation?
So I told Cindy that she could come here to the next meeting in case you had any really tough questions for her, because she really feels like she's missing out on this. So anyway.
I always look forward to her
Thank you for
presentation.
your patience this evening with me. Thank you again to Transportation for being here.
Thank you.
And to our drivers who are in the room for all the work that you do every day, and on snowy roads too. So at this
Thank you.
point, I'm going to turn it over to Ray. And I'm going to just sit over here because I'm going to pop that up.
Well, hello. My name's Ray Nardelli. I'm the Director of Technology. And now that I know that people actually parallel park buses, I think my job's a lot easier. That's a big thing. Last year, when Sal gave this presentation, he highlighted the upcoming Power of One Chromebook initiative. So I thought I'd start this year's presentation by giving you an update, a summary of how things have been going. Some of the big view and some of the nitty gritty. So I'm going to start with a video that I put together, and I'll go from there.
This year has been really revolutionary with the way I've approached my teaching with having now access to their Chromebooks. Before, I've only usually had access to textbooks. Now I'm just giving them a prompt, a question, something to guide them, a challenge, and then they have to decide what they're going to create, how they're going to create it. And they have all the information they're pulling from the Chromebooks. They have different ways to collaborate and use tools together. It's been really amazing.
5 out of 6 classes I have every day use the Chromebook, so pretty much a majority of them. We write with the stylus. I use Squid and I take PDFs from her and I write on them. I do my homework with Squid. And then with other classes, it's more just typing. For econ, we usually have presentations that we look at and then worksheets that are also online, and we just turn those in through Classroom.
For my advanced classes, is some 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we start the class with the news, the French news, so they know exactly what's happening in France or in the world. So I choose clips from what is important, and it's really current. So it's not like something we read a week later, so it keeps them current on what's going on.
One thing that I can do is I can basically record my notes, and I can basically give kind of a mini lecture of 5 or 10 minutes online, and that frees me up in class to do other things. We can go on WebQuest, or we can do group activities, or we can do more differentiated learning in that regard.
Chromebooks it actually has made a big difference in the way I learn. For starters, it makes it much easier for me to keep track of my notes, and my backpack is much thinner. I never actually lose homework or notes anymore.
I talk a lot about digital literacy and being able to create something, having a positive online presence. What can you create that distinguishes yourself from the rest of the pack if it comes to a job interview or getting into college? So it's not just what you're not doing online, it's what you're actually creating, what kind of value you're putting out there.
Even if the kids are absent, they know exactly what's going on in my class. They don't have to wait to come back to study or to look at the notes, or even sometimes I tell my student, okay, is this your friend? Why don't you share your notes with your friend who's absent, so that way if they want to look what we're doing in class, they have access to it right away and not wait till he come back or she come back from being sick. So to me, that is powerful.
In my AP Calculus AB classroom, I am flipping the classroom this year, which means that I'm providing videos, short lessons for my students to watch outside of class. So they use their Chromebooks or they use their phone to watch the videos and take their notes on the Chromebooks. I push out worksheets ahead of time so that way they have the information before they come to class. And what that allows me to do is do more complicated problems in a longer period of time in class when needed, and have me there while they're doing it to access for questions. So the flip model for me has worked dramatically well because I'm able to push them to extend what we're learning and use more time wisely in class.
Before we had the Chromebooks, I'd have to wait till I got home to look up something I didn't understand, or something I needed to do online because we didn't have computers here. But now if I don't understand something in a class, I can actually take on my Chromebook and just look it up while the teacher's talking.
This is actually one of my Google Classroom pages. And so typically what I do is, any assignments, and anything we're doing in class, I put here. I divided up into topics based on the different chapters that we talk about in class. So, like when we were talking about the Supreme Court cases the other day, they had a reading that they had to read. I divided the kids up into groups, and the kids had to read, one of these different Supreme Court cases. And then this was a shared document in class, and I had this projected on the screen on the overhead, and they kind of gave me the background, and then they gave me the constitutional issue that was relevant to each case, and then we kind of talked about the decision. Did we, what was the decision? Did we agree with it? Did we disagree with it?
We've pretty much gone paperless, and I feel like it's just like physically it's just been a lot better because there's just so much less paper, and it's a lot easier to access things, and especially in math class. Miss Linehan, she kind of gives us the option, but I do everything on the Chromebook.
I also like the Chromebook because the kids who are not organized can find their material all the time by doing the search and not, looking their book bag. They don't have no clue where they are, where the notes are. Everything is always there for them. So I think for kids who are disorganized, it's tremendous plus.
I wish I had it for college. I wish I had it for high school just because of how organized you can be. I, as a teacher, am using the squid and the stylus and annotating as much as I possibly can.
So that was there was a few voices from the many, and I want to bring attention to the student survey that we did as a part of the strategic plan. And as you read through the students' responses, I would say there were, regarding the Chromebooks anyway, the responses from the students were probably 10-to-1 positive. I mean, there were definitely some students who don't like to have the Chromebooks or had negative things to say about them, but there was probably 10 positive comments for every one negative. But the teachers, I have to say, overall, I honestly think this has been a tremendous success. The teachers, I think, went into the school year with an open mind, and some of them, as you saw, there's many others who totally embraced this. Others, I think, keeping it at arm's length, watching what others are doing, trying to see if their colleagues, can lead the way. And that's the way this stuff always works. But, I think the students also had some trepidation coming in, not really knowing, if they really wanted to have these things, lugging them around. But again, I think that it's been very positive. So thank you. I'm speaking of thanking the efforts, but thanks for, agreeing to make this happen. Obviously, I wasn't here when that decision was made, but I was really happy to take the baton from Sal and kind of push this forward. What I'd like to talk about for the next couple minutes is the behind the scenes. So when you walk down the hallways of the middle school or the high school during a school day, and you look into the classrooms, at least when I do, 75, 80% of the classes have Chromebooks open. And their students are, hopefully working on academic things and not shopping online. But that's the visible part of it. But there's so much behind the scenes work. And I have to say that I've been so fortunate to take over an IT staff that's been really talented, really passionate, and incredibly supportive. In fact, so supportive I have one. Lynn Sherrick is back there with me today. But the idea that, I basically came in here and they ran the show. I mean, I didn't have to do a whole lot to kind of make this effort work. So, but some of the things that they've done, just kind of highlight these things here. So even the planning and logistics that went on over the summer was mind-boggling. And I just walked into this and watched it all happen. So Sal actually purchased these Chromebooks for the high school like back in May, and we didn't receive them until the second week of August. So we were incredibly anxious, waiting. The supplier kept saying, they're coming, don't worry, they're coming. And finally they came, thank goodness. But while we were waiting for all those to come in, the high school, we have a lot of the folks from the help desk, the high school students in the help desk, and they return after they go to college to come and help us, which is tremendous. And they were in the elementary schools and in the middle school, just touching every single Chromebook. We have 1,100 Chromebooks in the middle school, and they all had to be organized, they all had to be labeled, they all had to be assigned, they had to be cleaned. So the work that went into that. And then when these Chromebooks finally came for the high school, there was pallets and pallets and pallets of these Chromebooks. And Navarre Johnson and Justin Brown, and they kind of put this whole assembly line together with our summer workers. And 2,000, it's a lot, right? So you got to unbox them, and then you have to copy their serial number down and assign them to a student and put the software on there and label them. So this is maybe you'll like this. That is, I think, one of 3 piles that we ended up with in our cafeteria as we unbox these things. It was just unwieldy. And then this is an example of the Chromebooks all ready to be after they were labeled. And then this one, I love this one. This is just the sea of Chromebooks that were back there in the LMC as we were preparing. So look at the organization in that alone. I mean, just the fact. There was a lot of trepidation about handing these things out. Before the beginning of the school year, were we going to be able to actually hand out 2,000 Chromebooks, or 1,800 in fact, to the high school, and actually by the lots of help from the IT department and other people. The tech coaches helped out. By the first day of school, there was only about 50 Chromebooks that still remained to be handed out. So that's one minor thing. Every Chromebook, as the board found out today as they logged into Chromebooks, every Chromebook needs an account in order to log into it. So, the work on the back end, and Lynn does a lot of the account work for us. Justin Brown does a lot of the account work. But, creating accounts for 4,500 students and 800 staff and working on passwords. And the help desk, the students were tremendous through the early weeks of the school year, because people just, kids came back, they couldn't log in, they needed the password resets. So just a lot of work in just something as simple as accounts. This was scary to me. So we were going to start the school year with an additional 2,000 devices on our network. You can simulate some stress tests, but not until they actually come back and turn them on and connect do we really know how well we're doing. And we had some bumps. We did. We had to make some configuration changes early on with our network with our internet provider over at BOCES. But we did it, and we ended up segmenting our network so that keeping the students' personal devices off our academic network, so that our academic needs for the traffic could actually be more be better utilized. So there's again a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. We have a web filter. In case you didn't know, I know the students know this, but every single time you put in a web address, it goes through our filter to determine if it's safe content, if it's appropriate content for for a public school. If it's not, it gets blocked. If it's fine, it comes through. And we even filter at home. So students take their Chromebooks home, and it goes through our filter. We've actually implemented a cloud-based web filter over Christmas. The hope was that it was going to make the Chromebook faster for students at home. I did a survey with students, and about a third or a little bit more than a third said they noticed a faster internet connection through the Chromebook after Christmas. About a third of them said no difference, and then it was probably a little bit more than that. But anyway, so I think just the fact that we're kind of working to keep the students safe, but also help them have a better experience when they're using it.
Can I interrupt on that? I just have a question. If a student wants to get to a particular website and there's nothing actually wrong with the website and it's academic in nature, is there a mechanism in which they can send somebody an email to say, hey, please look at this site, I'd like to gain access to it? I have heard that just a couple of times.
Yeah, for sure. We're always dealing with that. Teachers, most of the time, are the ones contacting us saying that, my kids can't get to the site. And Gary Halbedell, who's our network administrator, he's a point person on our filter. But I would say students who are trying to get to a site, that they could, do we have an email directly to our help desk? There is a help desk email, but I'm not sure if that creates a ticket, but that gets to us. Or, of course, come down to the help desk right here. and, you know, just report it. Because we can certainly, if it's a valid site, it's very possible. I mean, it's very difficult to filter correctly without making constant adjustments.
Yeah, if we could definitely find it like an easy process that the students could be aware of, especially at the high school level because they're
Yeah.
doing research. I don't know if it's in middle school.
Way is if they take the site to the teacher, who then gives it to Harry.
Give them the actual.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
some way, put it out there so the students are aware of what they should do, see the
Sure.
teacher or email, and that way
Yeah.
it'll be much easier for them as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
But,
yeah,
great.
Good, okay.
Is the filter different depending on grade level?
That is
So-
it's a really coincidental question because, no, currently it's not. But we're looking into it because we had an issue in the middle school where they were doing some health searches and some things came up that I think were a little bit alarming. But in the end, when we searched the path, because we're able to see, okay, what was the student's name, and we can actually go and see what they searched for and what they got to. And it was all very legitimate sites, but what it alerted us to is those sites may be totally legitimate for 8th grade or above, but maybe not below. So we're looking to segment our filtering by grade now.
Okay, because I was just thinking that, I mean, what's appropriate for a high schooler might not
Absolutely.
be appropriate for a fourth grader.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What do you mean?
Another point of concern as we started the school year was the kids, you know, every student's going to have a Chromebook in the middle school and high school, and I think teachers were a little worried about whether, you know, what the students would be doing on these Chromebooks. So there's a lot of classroom management tools out there. We decided to go with a tool called Land School. Land School, let me just give you a little view. So what Land School allows a teacher to do is view the students' Chromebooks while they're in the classroom to see what they're doing. And the teacher can then, they could also blank the screens so that they can't see anything, or they could show the screen of the teacher's computer onto their computers. So there's a lot of different ways to use a tool like this. I think a lot of teachers, after they got over the beginning of the school year, realized that, you know, it was okay, and then they probably just wander around the classroom and look over student shoulders to make sure that everybody's on task. But just configuring that was a big deal. Supporting teachers learning through the needs of purchase of instructional software. So now we have all this great hardware. Now comes the software part. And you'll see that when I talk about my budget line, because you know, as we all know, we can buy a computer, but until you buy a Microsoft Office or something, there's not a lot of use in what you have. So teachers have been experimenting, coming up with new software titles, and talking to us about purchasing these titles. So we have a process in place where we review the title, try to determine if it's just one teacher who wants it, a whole department who wants it, or maybe a school-wide purchase. So that goes on. This is, so our help desk right here does all of our repairs. We decided to self-insure our Chromebooks. So rather than pay an insurance company and send out for repairs, we do repairs ourselves by purchasing the parts. We are an official Acer warranty repair site, and our students, along with our help desk professional staff, do the repairs. They repair screens, they repair keyboards, batteries, trackpads, on both the Dells. The Dells are used in the middle school and elementary school, and then in the high school we have the Acers. So a lot of work. This is kind of interesting. This was another thing that I was scared about because just I had no idea what kind of how durable these would be. And percentage-wise, we've only had about 75 from the beginning of the year to right now. In the high school, we've only had about 75 accidental breakages where it required a screen or a keyboard or something like that. And when you look at 1,800 Chromebooks, that's only 4% of the Chromebooks had any major damage. In the middle school, they're up around 9%. And we determined, though, this was interesting, there's a lot of back and forth on this, but the middle school, they're not allowed to have backpacks or bags, so they're carrying their Chromebooks around, dropping them accidentally, denting them, shattering the whatever. So over Christmas, we purchased a bag for every single middle school student. And since then, at least anecdotally, the damage in the middle school has gone way down because they're required when they're walking through the hallways to have it in their bag.
It's like an
a
iPhone
very
without a
good
case.
bag. What's that?
It's an iPhone without a case.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, lastly, this is kind of a cool project that we've been struggling with a little bit, but working very diligently to get it going. But Follow Me Printing. So the idea here is that the students will print to the cloud, and then they can go up to any of the printers that we have stationed in the hallway, swipe their RFID card, and it releases the print job to that printer. Again, we've had some issues with this, we've had some hiccups, but we continue to kind of work on the system. And in theory, it's great, it saves a lot of paper. So rather than just printing something and then maybe somebody doesn't go and pick it up, it just sits in the cloud for like 8 hours. After 8 hours, if it doesn't get released, it just vanishes. But I could ask you all, but I don't want to ask. Maybe it's going well, maybe it's not. But we continue to try to make it better because we've heard some complaints and some frustration. So that is kind of the behind the scenes. I could talk a lot more about it, but I've got limited time. I do want to talk about 2 other projects that we've been working on. Again, I could talk about a lot of projects, but in 2.5 weeks, we are going 100% Gmail. We're transitioning from Microsoft Outlook and, from, it's getting late, I guess. But we're moving from Microsoft to Gmail, bottom line. And we've been doing a ton of training, a ton of Q&A sessions with all departments across campus. And that's, I think it's, people are excited. People are, we're going to reduce confusion by having just one email system instead of 2. And the other project to mention that I think is important is we're going to put a second internet connection in the middle school. And with the reliance on the cloud, from Gmail to Google Docs to Google Classroom to iReady to a lot of other tools, we can't really afford to ever have our network go down. So by having a second internet connection in a different location, if one connection does go down, we can route traffic through the other on-ramp to the superhighway. And when they're both up and running, then we can utilize both pipes, and it's a lot more gives us a lot more bandwidth. So that will be done before the end of this year. So before I go on to talk about this next budget, any questions on any of that stuff?
No, but I just wanted to say that when this was occurring and you were starting in your new position, I was having heart palpitations, and I think I said, it was either Jody or Dave, I can't remember, how's this gonna work? So I was very concerned, and considering all that you did over your first summer here, you had a great team, obviously, that helped you roll out this tremendous transition to the Chromebooks, but it seemed pretty effortless if the only main concern at the beginning was the stylus pen. That's pretty good. For all of this, the Chromebooks that were delivered, and for the first year, it's been tremendous in the classroom, and despite some of the concerns that they may have now with just getting, speed or small little items, it's been tremendous first year, so thank you.
Well, I have to also give a ton of credit to Sal D'Angelo. I mean, he led this team, he led this effort, he put this network together with his team. He got everything ready to kind of launch this. So, he's gone, he's on to bigger and better things, but he really, he set me up really well. So
That's
between
great.
that and my team, I think it's been great.
But thank you for filling those big shoes, so it was a big job, so thank you.
I just had a couple questions. In the fall, I heard a number of concerns about the requirement that the students have to bring the Chromebooks home so that they can be charged and then bring them back, and some frustration if they were essentially just carrying them home, charging them, they didn't need them at home, having to put them back in their backpacks and bring them back. Do you feel like that concern is dissipated as the year has gone on? I'm not sure there's a solution because there's not a way to charge them all here at the high school.
Exactly, yeah. I honestly haven't, I heard, a few comments like that, but nothing overwhelming that people were frustrated. And I hope, as the years have gone on, the teachers are leveraging these more, so it helps a lot
Okay.
to have your Chromebook at home to actually do your homework. And, although, a lot of these kids have family computers or even laptops, I think it's so super streamlined using their Chromebook that I think my hope is that the kids are enjoying them, and it's a good tool to have.
Okay.
And having,
then-
having two high schoolers, they just put it in their backpack and they bring it home. They don't stop at their locker. Most of the high schoolers don't use their lockers. I would say probably 80-90% don't use their lockers. So it's no different than, it's just in their backpack, they bring it home. And they
Okay.
both use it every night.
And then the other question I had is, technology eventually becomes obsolete. Do you have an expectation of when all of those piles of Chromebooks are going to need to be replaced?
Yeah, the theory is 4 years, every 4 years, a device needs to be refreshed. And these are about $400 devices. So it's on my to-do list to really work out a replacement plan that will give us an even expense over the course of the years. I haven't done that yet. It's a bit complex. In fact, I was just talking to the team today about I need to determine when a lot of these Chromebooks were actually purchased, and so we can, phase them out. Our 8th grade next year will get the 12th graders Chromebooks. So our 12th grade, they graduate, they hand in their Chromebook, they go to the 8th grade. Our 9th graders are going to get brand new Chromebooks. So that's the plan for now, is the 9th graders will always get a brand new Chromebook, and then they'll keep it for 4 years.
Okay.
We'll see how that goes, but that's the plan right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, on to my budget. So my budget is going to increase slightly. This process of combing through the budget was almost as challenging as the power of one to me. I mean, the amount of expenses that were, that the IT department makes, I had to comb through years prior budgets just to kind of see what did we spend our money on, how are we spending our money this year, and then, of course, how do we want to spend our money moving forward. So it's a complicated process for me. As I looked at things, I decided to reorganize the budget a little bit to make more sense to me and hopefully the business office. So some of the fluctuations you see up there are because I've recategorized things. Not so much that we're spending a tremendous amount of money or increase or decrease. But I'll explain some of these lines. So the salaries I'll talk about in a second. The equipment line, that's going down pretty drastically. We did buy a lot of equipment this year for the one-to-one initiative. And although we're going to be buying some more Chromebooks for next year, it's not quite as, to the extent of this year. I'm also going to be doing another installment purchase through BOCES. So we have 3 installment purchases that are kind of ongoing through BOCES, and one of them will end this year. So I'm going to keep the budget level by implementing a new installment purchase plan. So we're going to buy some equipment on that installment purchase plan, which brings that number down a little bit. As I talked about software, we need to have more software. This is something, we need to be able to support the teachers and the students. As an example, we're doing a typing pilot right now in the elementary schools, and we're looking at a couple different typing titles. So for K through 5, we want to have a unified or a typing program that all schools use. And one of them that gets really high reviews is going to cost about $9,000 a year just for that one single title. So when you look at that, in the video there was a title, a note-taking app called Squid that was mentioned a few different times. We bought not even a whole high school license for that, but that's a $7,000 purchase. So you add all those things up, and the software really is something we need to have a pool of money so that we can support the students and the teachers. Purchase services, again, this is more about reallocation. I do have the second internet connection in that line, which is one reason it's going higher. But I moved some repair expenses out of a printer cartridge line into the repair expense budget. Not really sure why repairs were in a printer cartridge line, but just changes like that to kind of which again, it looks drastic, but it's just a lot of movement. In the end, you know, it's a slight increase, a 1.1 increase from last year. Let's see. And then salaries. So we've been a little bit shorthanded this year because we had a retirement last summer, and then we had someone leave us in August, and we've been struggling to hire. So, but we finally did. We're kind of getting on top of it. But in the meantime, we have had these help desk students who have graduated from Bethlehem, and they've come back and they've helped us. They've been a godsend. There's a few different ones who have been working for us off and on since the beginning of the school year, and it's been tremendous. And that summer help again. This year, I still have the $35,000 in there. I'll see how it goes. I'm not sure if we're going to use as much this year because I think there's a little less work, but I'm not positive. I need to live through a summer to really figure that one out. Like in the transportation department, we do have some income. But you know, every purchase we make through BOCES, we get 62% of that back the next year. So we're always mindful when we're making purchases to purchase through the BOCES consortium so that we can get that money back the next year. Based on enrollment, we get hardware and software money from the state. So when you total that up, it's over $600,000. And then in yellow, this is the last thing, I promise. Smart Schools funding. I don't know if we've been talking about Smart Schools funding, but there's money that the state has allocated for every single school in New York. And so there's a pool of $2 million out there for us to take advantage of. And when Sal was leaving, he recommended that we use it to upgrade classroom technology. And after being here for 7 months, I totally agree with him. So I'm going to be moving forward on that. We're doing some pilots out in the high school and middle school right now, giving teachers 2 weeks trial of different types of technologies so that we can bring them all together to make a decision as to how we want to go and how we want to spend this money. So at an upcoming board meeting, maybe in a couple of weeks, I'll probably be presenting a plan to spend our Smart Schools money. It needs to get approved by the board, then it needs to be publicly available on our website for a month, and then we have to have a public forum. And if all that goes through, then we can actually put our application in and hopefully in the next 6 months, get approval and start moving on upgrading our classroom technology.
Ray, on slide 22, the BOCES line, what is in, that's purchases? What is in that?
There's so much in that. So everything from we have a lot of networking equipment that has maintenance, yearly maintenance fees. That's in our BOCES line. Our printers are all managed through national office. So our printers and our copiers are all we pay them to give us replacement toner, and they come in, they repair our printers anytime we have issues. That's all in the BOCES line. Our internet, we have an internet connection in the BOCES line. There's a lot of, there's things like software called Linkit. There's, I don't know, just trying to think off the top of my head, but there's quite a bit of, I have all that detail if you're interested in seeing it.
Is that what we're getting the 62% back on?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it might be helpful to have a breakdown of that for the next meeting, just for,
Happy to-
some
That would be
better
helpful.
idea of what's going through.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
And just to wrap up quickly, of course, as Lynn noted, she's not running again for election, but we do have 2 seats. Both Lynn and Charmaine's terms are expiring the end of this year. So the highest vote getters will have a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2021.
And I wanted Lynn to have her time to make her announcement, and I will not run for the board either. I've served 3 terms and 9 years, cannot compare to Lynn's commitment. But I want to encourage as many people in this community to run for the board. When I first ran, there were 5 people running for 2 seats. I know last year, I think there were 7 people running for 3 seats. You should not be afraid of that. I think the district and the community that the board serves benefits when they have a choice. So I would encourage as many people as possible to consider running for the board, getting information about it, and submit those petitions so we can have choice on the ballot. Over the years, I've asked different people if they would consider running for the board, and so many people tell me there's no way I could do that. And I want to tell you, yes, you can. Because if I can do it, you could do it. We all struggle with different learning styles, different time commitments, but if I could do it, you can too. I think that the board benefits from a range of experiences, and if you're retired, run for the board. If you're, can you be 18? You have to be 18, right?
18.
If you're 18,
There are
run for the board.
18-year-olds that have run.
Wouldn't it be
boards
lovely
around
to
the
have
state.
a student, of someone right out of high school, representing their voice and their opinion on this board? If I can, I say that sometimes I feel like I am few among many in this community for various reasons. If you are few among many, step up and serve on this board. If you have a same-gendered parent household, step up and be on the board. If you're a single parent, step up and be on the board. I really think the diverse opinions and perspectives that we all have brought to this board makes such a difference. And the last thing I'll say is sometimes people say, I am not of a certain political party, I would never get elected. That has come up numerous times. I personally don't care what your politics are. I don't care who endorses you. I don't care if you run with a certain group of people. I think if I have the courage, and everyone has the courage to sit on this board, I encourage you to have the courage too. Your political party has no, I personally don't care about that. And I don't endorse people, so if people have the courage and take on running for this board, I encourage this community to find out who they are and to themselves. Because oftentimes, when the election comes up, people always ask me, literally the week before, who should I vote for? Who should I vote for? And I don't know who you should vote for. I know who I'm voting for, and I might tell you that. But if people take the time and energy to run for this board, please take the time and energy to find out who they are before you cast that vote. And that is all I would like to say.
And wow, I'm surprised you announced that tonight, but I've been on the board with you for 4 years now, and I think we've had a really diversified board with a lot of different opinions and ideas, and I think, as you suggested, it's really important, but you've been very active and dedicated to this board, and you've served during some very hard, difficult financial times and closing of a school, and it's been appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Charmaine, for all your contributions.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that.
Before we go to the other meetings too, on the budget, I have to admit, since I've been out in the community since our last meeting and that newspaper article came out with a $3 million deficit, everywhere I go, people are saying, so Charmaine, how are you gonna close that deficit? And the board, obviously. And obviously, as you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have multiple ways of closing that deficit. But I will tell you, the community is watching, and they're asking me, so what are you going to do about that $3 million deficit? We have closed $6 million deficits. We have closed $7 million. So we will do that. But I think as we make presentations are made, I'm looking for ways for where that $3 million is coming from. So, I appreciate the 100,000 here. So I think the board should ask questions. How many positions are you asking for? What are you doing with that money? Because people have been asking me, where are you going to come up with that $3 million?
And Judy's ready.
I know, but I think the community is watching us. So when people see this presentation, someone's going to add that up and say, okay, Charmaine, I saw $100-something thousand out of that $3 million. So please be mindful. And we do have multiple. I get it. We have multiple ways of balancing this budget, but the community is watching.
And that's a large number, and for the average household, you say a $3 million gap, and that takes their breath away. And I've had a number of people approach me over the last few weeks as well. And
I'm sure.
It's no cause for panic. I mean, I would love it if we could come in with the balanced budget at the beginning of the process, but that would take the fun out of all of our weeks of meetings and deliberations and discussions. So, yeah, we will get there, and it's tighter than it has been, but it's not insurmountable by any means. So, our next meeting is on March 7th, and we'll have Greg Nolte for operations and maintenance and Len Keys for athletics. And then the second meeting in March will be for our instructional programming and special ed and student services.
Okay.
So, thank you all, and that's it for budget tonight.
All right, PIG students, it's time. It's 9 o'clock. Come up and get your paper signed.
I was just going to say, can I?
Good time to take a stretch break.
And we can recognize if any visitors that are here on an agenda item.
To be honest with you, that's been real hard.
Agenda item, but we'll get to the public comment really quick. Okay. Item number 8, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items 1 through 3.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Hang on, I gotta catch up, actually. I think I have some questions on something. It may not be it, but. Yeah. Yep. Can you explain the debt service thing, the transfer in a couple of quick statements? I saw the memo, I think I understand, but I think it would be helpful to have it quickly explained.
Sure. So the largest component of this debt service reserve fund, there's just over $3 million in it, came from a premium that was obtained on the bonds that were just sold in 2016. That was over $2 million. So what we need to do is to have a plan where we show that we're going to draw down on that money.
Okay.
So what we've done is we've aligned the amount in that fund with the underlying debt issuances. So we're asking you to approve the plan per that schedule that draws down a little bit each year, and then also to approve the transfer for the 17-18 school year. And then every year thereafter, at the organizational meeting, we'll put that on as an agenda item for you to approve that year's transfer per that schedule into the general fund. So it's a source of funding for the general fund that offsets the debt service payments within the general fund.
Okay. So that money is coming into the general fund for this year?
Yes, and every year thereafter, as per that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Item number 9, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following professional personnel action items 1 through 2.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question on the co-curricular volunteers, because I think some of at least one of these people is a parent.
Yes.
Are people screened and trained?
So so any parent or community member, if they're going to be working regularly with our students, we require fingerprint clearance,
Okay.
and then they get board appointed. A lot of the parent we have who volunteer are doing it through the PTA, and it's on an as-needed basis, but when they're working on a regular basis, we
We do a
appoint them and
background
we
check
do
on
the.
Yeah, not on any particular individual, but I was it brought up the issue when I realized it was a parent. and,
Yep.
Thank you. And the interscholastic coaching appointments have been amended so that they're not men's coaches on the track team there, because there was a typo, I think, before, because I had asked some questions about some of the track coaches had boys track team attached to it, and that was a typo, but had they been amended?
It was B/G on all of them.
No, some of them said boys track coach.
Well, when
I believe he said
I think it was.
He said he was going to amend it.
I think
okay.
it was changed.
Okay.
Because they were.
You updated, okay, I didn't get to see the updated one, all right, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Item number 10, support personnel, is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action items 1 through 7.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Item number 11, other action. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following action items 1 through 6.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question. Jody, is the calendar that we're approving, I didn't keep the one that you had given us earlier. Are there any changes
No,
from that?
it's the same
Okay.
one.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All in favor?
How about mentioning about the contract being approved?
Oh, yes, the BCUEA contract was approved, 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago? So we have a new contract that was very exciting, and we're happy that we could come to agreement.
And appreciate the efforts, too.
And appreciate the efforts to
on-
everybody.
On all sides of that.
On all sides, yes. There was a lot of time and energy and effort put into coming to a contract that everybody was happy with, so that's great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. At this time, we'd like to recognize visitors that are here on a non-agenda item. And if you want to come up to the mic, state your name.
Hello, I'm Hope Perlman. Is my voice going through the mic? I guess so. I just wanted to inform you guys of an email that I just received that yesterday in the, oh, there, I hear myself now. In the New York State Assembly, there was a bill introduced. I understand that's just the beginning of a process. Nothing may come of it, but the bill is the following. It is to establish a task force to study the feasibility of all middle schools and high schools in New York State beginning their school day at 8:30 a.m. or later. There are several sections of the bill to, study what start times are now all around the state, and then to try to, other elements of it. But that's the main thing I wanted to let you guys know, that I just found out about that.
Thank you, I
Seems
appreciate
important.
that.
And-
Yes.
Who introduced it, just out of curiosity?
Sepulveda, Assemblyperson Sepulveda.
Do you
And-
happen to have a bill number?
I was going to say.
Bill A9947.
Perhaps email it to us if that might be helpful, or
Yeah,
else people.
you can send it to me. Oh.
Okay, sure, I'll send it
And
to
I
you.
can share it with everybody.
Okay, great.
Perfect, thank you very much for waiting this time and being patient.
And-
I'm so sorry.
And just to, I don't know if you were at the last board meeting when I did the State of the Schools, but I am putting together a committee to look at that.
Yes, I
So-
heard that. I'd heard that. I was very glad to hear that, and I saw something in the Spotlight about it, too, so that's terrific.
And I just want to acknowledge Ms. Perlman, who's on the Strategic Planning Committee also.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, that is my name, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, future meetings. Our next board meeting is next week, Wednesday, March 7th. Regular time is 7 o'clock, and it is it's at the high school, yep. I'm sorry, my eyes are getting a little tired. We have a policy committee meeting Monday, March 12th at 6 PM. We have another regular board meeting on Wednesday, March 21st at the LMC in the high school, and April 10th at 7 o'clock. At this time, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? So moved. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.